Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. In particular, I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e and Marvel because all hail Hydra. I saw this on the internet and I just couldn't help myself. I felt like it was totally appropriate for the video content for today. We're actually talking about the Thessalhydra from the Stranger Things Dungeons & Dragons 5e starter set. And this is a Dungeon Master guide. So if you are a player and you could be playing in this particular adventure or playing this particular box set, please stop watching. In fact, if you are a player and not a Dungeon Master, I kind of question why you're watching this video. I do have plenty of other videos you can go and watch. Otherwise, if you're a Dungeon Master and you've got this box set and you want to run the adventure inside, we're going to talk about the Thessalhydra. Okay, I'm going to say it right now. For those of you who don't understand, it is definitely going to be full of spoilers. There's going to be spoilers galore. I will spoil things and then spoil things over the top of spoilers and probably do more than that. Anyway, so what can we learn about the Thessalhydra in the adventure Hunt for the Thessalhydra? Now, I've already done a video on preparing for the Thessalhydra adventure, so Hunt for the Thessalhydra. There is a video on preparing for it because I'm preparing for it, so I needed a video and some information and notes, so I might as well sort of present it to everybody, right? Well, there are more questions than there are answers, so I did the most logical thing that I could possibly think of at the time, and I just made up stuff and guessed. So if you're thinking that everything that I present today is definitely in the adventure or on the internet and is definitely canon, it is not the case. I have just made stuff up because that's what I do sometimes when I can't find anything to actually present to you that I know is actually correct. So that's why I'm doing it. Okay, the Thessalhydra is a terrible monster that has been attacking Sir Tristan's realm in the lonely ranges or mountains. Now, we don't know exactly where this is. You're supposed to sort of pretty much just plonk it down wherever you think is appropriate. I don't mind doing that. I'm quite happy to plonk an adventure into my world wherever I want it to be, because that's kind of really, really helpful because I don't have to figure out everything. And yeah, that's good. Now, what has been happening with the Thessalhydra? Local farmers and villages and even the kingdom's castle has been raided or attacked by the Thessalhydra. This thing is tough. It is definitely capable of taking down a lot of armor and weapons and heat. So what do you do with a creature like this? Well, you don't invite it for dinner because that's obviously going to cause a whole lot of problems and you're going to get eaten. You'll be on the dinner menu. Okay, it seems to fear nothing and it eats absolutely everything that it encounters. Not really the sort of monster you want to invite to your dinner party. Even the soldiers of the keep or castle that are under the service of Sir Tristan don't seem to be able to kill it, and certainly were only able to just barely fight this thing off. That sounds like a terrible creature to include in a Dungeons & Dragons starter set, but here it is. Much like the Hydra, the Thessalhydra is a glutton. That means it likes to eat a lot of things, and it will literally wipe out everything in its environment and then just move on and continue to feed until there's really nothing left to feed on. Now, if you want to get a whole lot of really juicy information on the history of the Thessalhydra, I suggest you go and watch a YouTube channel called HowtoDandD. I did a little bit of research from his YouTube channel and from the internet. I found it really, really useful. This video is actually more about how the Thessalhydra is integrated into the Hunt for the Thessalhydra adventure rather than the absolute lore of the Thessalhydra right throughout Dungeons & Dragons. So go and check out HowtoDandD. He's got a lot of really, really interesting ideas and information. And to be fair, there isn't an awful lot of information to pull from anyway. This monster goes right back to the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And to be frank, it's really strange. It's a weird creature. I mean, you can see it. Look at this thing. This looks like a mess. It's like somebody has gone crazy in the genetics lab, and it starts to spat out this thing, and nothing sort of makes sense whatsoever, which of course is fantastic for any Dungeons and Dragons monster, because that's exactly the sort of stuff you want. So what does this Mutant Hydra thing look like? Well, it basically looks like a Mutant Hydra with sort of resembles sort of partly a purple worm, and it has a scorpion aspect to it on its tail. So it's essentially a cocktail of different really horrible monsters. It has 8 heads that are surrounding its mouth, which is quite large. It's a large circular mouth rimmed with sharp, or razor sharp, should I say, jagged teeth. It's got acidic saliva dripping from its mouth and teeth. That doesn't sound good at all. It sort of reminds me a little bit of the Alien movies, where, you know, you're watching the Alien and they have all this acid in their blood, and even the saliva that they drip from their teeth is all acidic. So yes, it's a nightmare. Its tail is basically a pair of sharp pincers that sort of can basically clamp onto you and possibly serrate you, cut into you, all sorts of really, really horrible things. Now, a powerful lich called Thistle, not Tesla. Tesla is responsible for a lot of electrical inventions, right? Now, we're talking, this is Thistle. That's Thessalhydra. Hopefully I pronounced it right, because if I didn't, don't tell me I haven't pronounced it right, because I won't care. And this lich created the first Thistle monster. Now, the Thistle monster was basically genetically unstable. Thistle is apparently responsible for the creation of many strange Dungeons and Dragons monsters, but this Thistle monster was completely unstable and possibly very, very horny. So it went and bred with other monsters to create new variants, or freaks, as you might say. Things that you really shouldn't want to go looking for in any place whatsoever. These monsters were deemed hot by the Thistle monster, such as the Hydra, which I believe was the original Thistle monster. But yes, having a good old time, jacking it up with another Hydra, the Chimera, the Gorgon, and a Cockatrice. I do not know how a Thistle monster is supposed to get busy with a Cockatrice, but apparently that did in fact happen. I don't believe it myself, but hey, it's Dungeons and Dragons, you can make up whatever you like. The original Thessalhydra is much more dangerous in the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons compared to the 5e version of Dungeons and Dragons, because the Thessalhydra we get in 5e is kind of like either a baby or completely tame and designed specifically for beginner players, so it doesn't wind up pretty much just wiping the floor, chewing them up, and then crushing their bones, which of course is not really how you want to start off your beginners with Dungeons and Dragons. I don't have an issue with that. I think that makes a lot of sense too. So here are 10 questions that I have. I'm going to talk about the 10 questions that I have on the Thessalhydra. I'm going to talk about my conspiracy theory, because I have a conspiracy theory for you. And I will talk about the monster tactics for the Thessalhydra that I would use in my game, which means that it's just my opinion and you don't have to follow it. And you think if it's garbage, then don't bother worrying about it, okay? Right, so first question. Why is the Thessalhydra feeding in Sir Tristan's realm or kingdom? Well, my speculation is this. It is just really bad luck on Sir Tristan's part, and it just happened to just wander into that location, and he's just the unlucky bugger who's got to figure out how to get rid of it. Or Thistle is currently experimenting nearby his kingdom and released this creature just to see what will happen, because that's what liches would do, right? Particularly if you're one that likes to create different aberrations and monsters and creatures to pretty much just cause strife, which I think that's really what Thistle was all about. There is also another possibility that I was considering, and that is that there is a rival nation that has encouraged this creature to feed in Sir Tristan's realm. Now that sort of opens up a whole lot of political issues too. So those are my theories, none of which I can prove, but at this point it really doesn't matter. Okay, question 2. Why is the Thessalhydra less powerful in Dungeons & Dragons 5e compared to Dungeons & Dragons 1e? Well, we kind of really answered that question a second ago, but I think the basic reason behind it is that you're dealing with a low-level adventure, and the designers of Dungeons & Dragons 5e don't really believe in throwing in huge, powerful creatures at low-level adventurers. Now, if we were dealing with a older form of Dungeons & Dragons, they probably would not have an issue doing something like that, but it would probably take the form of a random encounter, so there was a low chance of it taking place. The other possibility is that the monster is not fully matured, because the stat block does not look like it is a full-fledged Thessalhydra as far as I can tell, and I believe that DungeonDad can confirm that as well. I also think that essentially, as I said, that the designers didn't really want the beginners to be crushed by the first adventure they ever played for Dungeons & Dragons. It doesn't really mean that people want to come back and play the game again if you have killed their characters and made the whole experience kind of unpleasant, unless you have players who enjoy that sort of thing. Okay, question 3. Why is Winter's Dark Bite, the magical greatsword, more effective against the Thessalhydra? And to be frank, why is it more effective in the upside down world compared to anywhere else? Because as you can see from the picture I have presented you, it is certainly more effective against the Thessalhydra and in the upside down world. So here is my theory. It was designed for the creature. Essentially, somebody made this particular sword, the Winter's Dark Bite, to kill Thessalhydras, or Thistle creatures and monsters that Thesla is spitting out. It is specifically designed to kill it. Or the greatsword is sentient and very prejudiced against large monstrosities and monsters, and therefore that's why it decides to kick up its power when dealing with the Thistle monster. I know this one doesn't have, it's probably, it's pie in the sky stuff, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. The next reason I think it is that the greatsword is actually from the upside down world, the monster's home. Now I'm only speculating that the Thessalhydra used to live in the upside down world, or somewhere else, or some other demi-plane of existence, and maybe this particular sword comes from that world, and that's why it's more effective and more dangerous against the Thessalhydra and when it's being used in the upside down world. So that is question 3, all packed up and tidied up. Okay, let's go with question 4. I know you're wondering, Fred, how many questions did you come up with? I said 10. There's 10. But this is question 4. Why hasn't the Thessalhydra eaten or consumed the residents of the troglodyte cavern? That's all the troglodytes, the owlbear that's there, the giant frog. Why hasn't, it's a glutton, right? It just feeds on everything. Why hasn't it just gone plow on through and just eat everything in that cavern area? So here are my suggestions to you. It is full by the time it heads home. Therefore, it's already consumed so much stuff once they've left the cave. It's gone and eaten a whole lot of Sir Tristan's peasants and people and locals and other creatures, wild beasts and so forth, that it's already full, and therefore it can't actually fit any more troglodytes or an owlbear or a giant frog in its stomach until it has a rest in its lair to get rid of that stuff. And then, of course, you know what I mean, like, so it has time for its stomach to settle and then poo, okay? That's what we're getting at, pooing. All right, the next possibility is that the monster has eaten some of the troglodytes already, and the troglodytes that are still there are just the ones that didn't get eaten this time round. Now, the adventure does actually suggest that the troglodytes, and actually it does state, not suggest, it states that the troglodytes worship the Thessalhydra. I think that's a really, really ridiculous idea on the part of a troglodyte. I don't see why the Thessalhydra would not just see this as a great opportunity for feeding on the troglodytes, but that's what it states in the adventure, that the troglodytes are worshipping the Thessalhydra. Maybe that's good enough for the Thessalhydra not to eat them. Who knows? Now, I think this is much more likely, and that is that the troglodytes, or most troglodytes, taste like rotten eggs, and that the Thessalhydra does not like the taste of rotten eggs and therefore stays away from the stinky, smelly troglodytes that really aren't good eating. If you're going to eat something that's good for you and smells nice, right? Troglodytes is not something you put on the dinner meal. It's, you don't put it on the list. I'm going to go shopping and I want some troglodyte steak. Who does that? I don't think anybody does. The other possibility is that the troglodytes are hiding when the Thessalhydra comes through their cave area so they can't be eaten. Now, I think that's quite reasonable. I think that as an explanation seems like a reasonable suggestion or answer to that particular question. Okay, we're on to question 5. Bear with me or go to sleep, I understand. How did the Thessalhydra find the cursed labyrinth entrance? Yeah, doesn't look like it's very easy to find. So how did the Thessalhydra find the cursed labyrinth entrance? My suggestion to you is completely dumb luck, and it doesn't matter. Dumb luck. Let's go with dumb luck. It was actually from the labyrinth. Maybe the Thessalhydra was the guard in the labyrinth, but then it escaped, and it's only escaped recently, and so therefore it keeps going back to the labyrinth. But because it can escape again, it doesn't need to worry about staying there. It just uses it basically as a hallway while it's making its way home. Essentially, that's what it's doing, right? But it used to be the guard for the labyrinth. Just a suggestion. It was practicing its door opening skills. So while the Thessalhydra had a bit of spare time behind it and doing nothing else because there was nothing currently that it really felt like eating, it was using its door opening skills. We're going to come back to that one because I know that sounds ridiculous, but there are lots of things in here that will sound pretty ridiculous. We'll keep going though. The troglodytes actually show the Thessalhydra the entrance. Why not? The Thessalhydra gets introduced to a troglodyte and they say, oh, come this way, and here, door, open door, closed door. You can see this is the entrance to the labyrinth. That is definitely a possibility. I think that's high on my list for possibilities. Okay, let's get on to question 6. This one really stumped me. It took me a little while to sort of figure out what the heck was going on, and that is question 6 is, why hasn't the Thessalhydra eaten or killed the lost knight in the cursed labyrinth? There is a lost knight in full plate armor, and he's still there, and the Thessalhydra doesn't seem to have attacked him. It doesn't seem to have eaten him, so they're not in a big fight. There doesn't seem to be some sort of strange animosity between the two. So why hasn't the Thessalhydra eaten that lost knight? Well, I'm going to suggest that the lost knight is far more dangerous than the Thessalhydra, which means you really don't want the lost knight to be engaged in a combat with the player's characters, if that's the case. Maybe that lost knight is so powerful he's been able to beat back that Thessalhydra, just hasn't currently had an opportunity to kill it. Why not? The Thessalhydra doesn't actually like canned food, and to be fair, if you are in full plate armor, you are essentially canned food, and maybe the Thessalhydra doesn't like canned food. Another possibility is that the Thessalhydra doesn't mind eating canned food, but did not bring a can opener with him to open up the canned food, which is, of course, the lost knight. The other possibility is that the lost knight, yes, that is, the lost knight avoids the creature completely, so there's never any sort of major run-in or battle, and no chance for the lost knight to get eaten or killed, and no chance for the lost knight to try and kill the Thessalhydra. And I guess that really covers that particular topic as best I can. Question 7. The proud princess lives in the upside down world. Now she's very powerful, and yet she has not killed the Thessalhydra yet. Why? Why is that? What is she waiting for? Is she waiting for something to happen? Is she too busy? I think that's actually a possibility. We're going to get to it. So here's my suggestions to you as to why the proud princess has not actually killed the Thessalhydra. The proud princess she's really powerful, but she's extremely lazy and just lets monsters roam around her world constantly just because she cannot be bothered in slaying them. Possibility? Possibility. The princess is always extremely busy, so busy that she cannot get involved in destroying this unbelievably dangerous creature or beast. The Thessalhydra was in fact her pet, who ran away, and they have a rapport and understanding between them. You know, being a pet, you don't want to go and kill your pet, even though it ran away. That is a possibility. The Thessalhydra and the princess are luring. They are actually in league with each other, and they are luring the party to their deaths as they try to follow the Thessalhydra through the cursed maze or labyrinth, and then into the upside down world, and then to its labyrinth, and then it can feed on them because, guess what? The proud princess has explained to them how to get there. And of course, the Thessalhydra is just waiting to have dinner. Last possibility. Okay, question 8. Why are the troglodytes living in the Thessalhydra's lair still there? Why are they there? I don't get it, right? Now, we kind of answered that question slightly already, but let me talk about it. The troglodytes are friends with the Thessalhydra. We've covered that. The troglodytes are worshipping the monster. Well, that actually states that in the adventure. The Thessalhydra likes snacks close by, so it doesn't have to go too far, so it can feed. Or the troglodytes protect it and clean up its bones and poo. So therefore, the troglodytes are there to act as basically cleaners and nursemaids of some kind and protect it when it's sleeping, which it kind of sort of suggests, as I said. Well, it doesn't suggest, it states it in the adventure. Okay, so that was question 8. All right, question 9. We're getting there. I told you this was going to be a long video. Why does the Thessalhydra have a rather complex route? Let's get real. The route to get to its lair or cave is incredibly wacky and long and complex. So when it actually, because, why is it not going back that same way? If it's going to enter its cave by going through the troglodyte's cavern and then through this cursed labyrinth and then into the upside down world and then it gets into its cave area, why doesn't it go back that way? Now, clearly there's information in the adventure saying that you can only go one way, but then it just leaves through its cave entrance anyway, probably leaving tracks, unless of course the troglodytes sweep up as it leaves. I don't know, and get rid of the tracks. Possibility? Maybe. Is it really trying to hide its escape route? Because apparently that's the reason that kind of is suggested in this adventure, that the Thessalhydra is trying to escape. Well, why does it got to escape from? This thing fears nothing, and nothing can stop it. So why would it even have to worry about any of that? Does it make any sense? Another possibility as to why it takes this rather complex route to its cave or lair is that it just likes to go for the long walk. I like to go for long walks. Why not this particular monster? Or another possibility is it enjoys the company of the troglodytes in the other troglodyte cavern rather than the troglodytes in its lair, and likes to go and visit them as it's going back to its lair. Or it's drawn back to the cursed labyrinth. This is what I think. I think that the cursed labyrinth is in fact part of its original home. The cursed labyrinth is connected in some way to the upside down world, and I think that this creature is actually drawn back to that location every time it leaves its lair. Or, and I know this is a big jump of logic, that the Thessalhydra prefers to travel in straight lines, or no, No, it doesn't like to travel in straight lines, but it gets bored by traveling in a straight line and likes to take a deviated route so it doesn't get completely... I mean, to be fair, when I'm driving home from work, I would often find it more interesting to take a different route home rather than the same route I've taken every single day, because it's very, very boring. So that is my last suggestion for question 9. Okay, last one. You made it pretty close to the end of the video, guys. You're doing well. Okay, next one though is number 10. How does the Thessalhydra open the doors to the cursed labyrinth? There are doors there. Did we see them? I know I did. And I was thinking, this is weird. Why is it opening the doors? How is it opening the doors? Well, I'm just going to assume as a possibility that the snake heads are incredibly clever and they grip on to the doorknob if there is a doorknob, and it opens the doors that way, or the door swings inward and therefore all it's got to do is push on the door to get into the cursed labyrinth. Why not? There is the possibility that the troglodytes leave the doors open so that the Thessalhydra doesn't have to worry about opening the doors itself. Really, I am suspicious at this point that there is a local lich, undead lich. Thesla is a possibility, who leaves the door open or opens the door for the Thessalhydra as it's going through using some sort of long distance magic. Because there doesn't seem to be a lich in the area, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a Thessalhydra lich somewhere else doing this all remotely with magic somehow. The last point that I have for number 10 is really at this point in time, with all of the different questions that have been very, very hard to come up with solutions for and explanations for, I really don't care, because not really much of it makes any sense, but it's really cool. I still like the monster and I still like the adventure, but really at this point, you know, who really cares? It's too hard to think about anymore. Okay, now we're on to my conspiracy theory, because there has to be a really good conspiracy theory with every single monster that you come across. Here is my conspiracy theory. The Thessalhydra is an engine of endless hunger with odd dietary preferences. I think that there are dietary issues for this Thessalhydra, which is probably part of the reason why it doesn't eat everything it ever comes across, and it allows some things to be live and therefore worship it, such as the troglodytes. I don't know necessarily that it knows that there is an orchid jelly. I mean, I like jelly, but does a Thessalhydra like jelly? And things like owlbears and so forth, well, maybe they just make themselves scarce, who knows? But I'm just going to suggest dietary preferences. There are lots of people out there who have irritable bowel syndrome, vegetarians, vegans, stuff like that, and maybe our Thessalhydra has a similar issue. This creature is bound in some strange way to that cursed labyrinth. I'm absolutely convinced, and also the upside down world. My ultimate conspiracy theory is that the Thessalhydra escaped from the upside down world and the cursed labyrinth, and is currently preparing to give birth to babies. And this would explain the extremely odd behavior that it is exhibiting, and therefore would hopefully explain a lot of this stuff without having to go and watch the rest of the other material that I have talked about. And therefore would make all of the other explanations that I have for my questions moot. Okay. Its greatest weakness, as far as I can tell, is it has a lack of personal fear. And really, it's going to fight to the death because it doesn't really believe or think that it can die. Has it ever come across anything that it couldn't just destroy ultimately? I don't think it ever has. But then again, could be an immature Thessalhydra, hasn't finished maturing and growing, and is likely to get bigger, which, to be frank, we don't really need as adventurers, but as a dungeon master, it should be very, very amusing. Okay, monster tactics. You will find the monster Thessalhydra stat block in the starter set rulebook. It's not actually in the back of the adventure. It's actually in the back of the Stranger Things Dungeons & Dragons 5e starter set rulebook, of all places to put it. I actually think it's a great idea. I think it works out brilliantly. So fantastic. Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro or whoever has decided to put their name on this thing, you guys did a great job. I think that is a fantastic idea. Why did you not do that with the first Dungeons & Dragons starter set? It would have made my life so much easier and so many other people's lives so much easier. Okay, here are the monster tactics that I would use with the Thessalhydra. The troglodytes would absolutely fight alongside the Thessalhydra. That's my feeling, is they would definitely be there, not necessarily working in tandem with the Thessalhydra, but I think that they would certainly assist the Thessalhydra. I don't think the Thessalhydra really is worried about going and giving them a call, getting it up the cell phone and saying, guys, I need some help because there's some adventurers coming through, they're in my lair, can you come and give me a hand? I don't think it's like that. I think it's more like the troglodytes would do it because they think that the Thessalhydra is like the bee's knees, is like choice, okay? Use that acid saliva spit as often as possible. It's got a recharge on it, so at the beginning of your turn you roll a 6-sided dice. If you get a 5 or a 6, it recharges, you use it again. So that is a 1 in 3 chance every round that you get to use it again. Why would you not do that? You can target multiple creatures at the same time and do stupendous amounts of damage. So absolutely make sure to use that acid saliva. Remember to use the tail swipe, as that is a legendary action which you get to use as basically as a reaction at the end of somebody else's turn. So you have your turn, you do your acid spit or saliva spit, and then if it doesn't recharge, then of course you're going to use other attacks that are available to you, such as the flurry of bites and the maw. But what you want to do is you want to use that tail at the end of somebody else's turn, and you get to do that twice in a whole round. That ought to make life rather interesting. Remember, once that tail has grappled a target, it can be thrown into the wall of the caverns or thrown somewhere else if you feel like. It could even be tossed into the mouth and chewed by the Thessalhydra. I know it doesn't actually state that in the monster stat block, but you're the dungeon master. You get to play around and adjust things. And I feel like grabbing it with the tail and then throwing it into the mouth for a nice chomp down would be a perfect and sensible thing to do if you are a Thessalhydra. Okay, this monster does not flee from combat. Okay, it does not run. It fears nothing. Okay, it actually states that the condition, frightened, for it does not apply. It doesn't say anything about fear, but I feel like that's sort of still in the same theme, and I would go with it does not run away. The PCs. Now, if the player's characters drop during a battle with this creature, I think the Thessalhydra would probably scoop it up and eat them. Now, given that you're running a new campaign or a one-shot or an adventure, most likely for new players, even though it's very, very tempting to do this, and if you are the Dungeon Master with experienced players, I would do that for sure, because it would be funny, it would be memorable, and that's what the monster would do. And as long as you have a good relationship between Dungeon Master and your experienced players, they will totally get it and understand. So I think that's fine. But you as the Dungeon Master have to make that final decision. With beginners, I would be tempted not to do that, even though it'd be the most logical thing to do. It would be absolutely the most logical thing to do. But anyway, that is everything I have. Now, if you have run the hunt for the Thessalhydra, or you know far more about the Thessalhydra than I do, please leave a comment. Okay, give me some feedback. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer questions if I have the solution, which, if I haven't already presented it, probably means I don't know the answer, but you never know. I'm happy to have a dialogue with you. If you're not part of the live stream, use the comment section. Now, I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters, and you are welcome to go and check them out if you want to keep supporting this channel. You did so by sitting through this rather long video. I do this quite a lot. I understand long videos are unpopular, but I do long videos. Players, dungeon masters, you will find heaps of stuff. I don't do Patreon, but I do have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon, which helps support the channel. You know what the deal with them. I'm not going to go into that anymore. Now, share, like, and subscribe. Share, like, and subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell button if you want to be notified when I go live and publish new videos, which is good. I'd go live quite a lot, so it would be helpful to you. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.